Hey everyone, in today's video, I'm going to talk about how to get started with testing in Flask. And this video assumes a little bit of knowledge about how testing works in general and in web apps. But even if you've never done testing before, I think you can follow along with this video. So I have this app that I've created, and I'm going to use this app as the thing to test in this video. So the app is complete in a sense. So all I'll be writing is tests and talking about how to test. So to test the app, I'll be using PyTest, the library, instead of the built-in unit test library in Python, because I think it's a bit better when it comes to testing. And the types of tests that I will run in this video are integration tests. And you can think of integration tests in the context of a Flask app as basically calling the endpoints in a test, so the routes that you have set up, and then checking the information that results from the endpoint being called. So either the response or something in the database. So first, let me show you the app that I have. It's very simple and it's very random. I just want to show you a random app so I can demonstrate how to test a few different things. So I can either log in or register. Let me go ahead and create an account. I'll just say Anthony at anthony.com and I'll put in a password and hit register. And then I can log in using that same password. I don't want to save the password here. So Anthony at anthony.com, and then I'll log in. Once I log in, I'll see three new buttons. I can either log out, which is obvious. I can go to city or I can go to age. So let's start with age. The idea here is I'm calling some kind of API, right? That's what I'll be testing. And this API that I'm calling will just take a name and return like the best guess for the age. So I'll put in my name, Anthony, and I'll guess my age. And it says I'm 56 years old. So I'm not that old yet. And if I try another name, like let's say Amber, I get another number, 38. So Amber appears to be a younger name than Anthony. So that's the idea behind this API. It's not so important that it's doing this. The important part is it's calling some API, and that's what I'll show you in the test. Then finally, I'll go back. I'll go back home. I don't have a link, and I'll go to the city link here. And this just allows me to add cities into the database. So let's say Los Angeles. I'll add the city. I can select the country. So Canada, Toronto, add city. So that's basically it. And of course, I can just log out again. So that's the app. It's very simple. The point of the app is to demonstrate testing. So let's go over to the code. And here I have this directory called project, and I have my routes defined here. I don't know if I need anything in models to show you. I just have a user model, a country model, and a city model. And then I have my extension set up here and then the main app and of course the templates. So the very first thing I need to do is I need to install PyTest. So PyTest will be the test runner. So it will take the tests that I define and actually run them for me. So I'll stop my server and install PyTest. So pip install PyTest. Next, what I want to do is I want to create a folder next to my project directory called tests. Right. So this will be outside of my project. So when I'm going to be calling things inside of my project, I'll be importing from my project into tests. And then I want a couple of files in here. So the first file is a special file called conf test, so configure tests. And this is for PyTest. So you can set up your test environment and the things that will get called before every test, at least before every potential test. And another file that I can create is called test underscore project. So this can actually be anything that starts with the word test underscore. For my purposes in this video, I'll just create one file, test project, but you can obviously have more files. I'm just going to keep it very simple with the test because testing is a huge topic and I just want to focus on like the basics of it. So let's go back to the configuration file. And the first thing I can do is I can import PyTest. And next, what I want to do is I want to define something called a fixture. So a fixture in PyTest is something that is available to every single test that you write. And the point behind this is like you can have some kind of consistent setup for each test if you need it. So in this particular case, the main fixture that I need is one for the app itself. Because I'll be using the app to both send requests to it so I can get the response and to kind of check the results of whatever happens, I need to create a fixture for the app. So to do this, I'll use the PyTest that I just imported as a decorator, and I'll call the fixture decorator. So PyTest.fixture is the decorator here, and then the name of the function is special. this name will be used in the other file. So app here is the name that I want. And then inside, I can set up everything that I want to happen before I run a test. So I want to set up an app. So I'll do app equals create app, right? And I need to import create app. So this is coming from project. So from project, import create app. And let me just show you this. So I'll go to project, I'll go to dunder init, and we see I have my create app function like normal. And here I have the database defined as a parameter. So you can pass in the database URI as a parameter, and it has a default, which is just db.sqli3, which goes into the instance directory. So the reason why I have that is because when I call it here, I want to pass in a database. So for a test, I can create an entire database so I can run the test, and this will be separate from my actual database that I use in my project. But since I'm using SQLite, there's an easy way of doing this where I don't technically create a new database on the file system. I just create it in memory. And to do that, I just do SQLite ://. And this will create a SQLite database in memory. And then once the test is over, it will just destroy the database. So next what I can do is I can create all the tables in the database. So first I need to import DB from my project, which is the same DB that I always use in my videos. And this is the same DB from SQL Alchemy that allows you to write queries, add things to the session, and create all the tables and so on. So with this, I need to do this inside of the app context because db.createAll, which is what I'm about to call, needs to be run when the app is running in a sense, or at least when the app context is active. So I can do with app.app_context, and then I can do db.createAll. So what this is going to do is it's going to put all of my models into my database. So it's going to convert those to tables and put those three in my database. So user, country, and city. And before I do anything else, so there is one other thing I can do. I can set up the data for the countries, but I'll do that later. Instead, what I'll do is I'll yield the app. So you could return the app here, but the idea with PyTest is you yield it. So anything that happens before the yield is like your setup for the test. And then anything that happens after the yield is the teardown for this particular fixture. So just yielding here, I don't have any teardown, but if I did, I can put it after, and then PyTest will run the code that comes after yield once the test is finished running. But in this case, I won't put anything after. So that's the first fixture I need. The second fixture I need is one called client. So I'll do the same thing, pytest.fixture. And then I'll name this client. And the way that fixtures work is you can pass the name of the fixture as an argument to your tests or your other fixtures, right? So in this case, I'll be calling client and I'll pass it as an argument. Well, technically this is passing it as a parameter, right? So what happens is PyTest is going to look at your parameter list and match the names with any other fixtures, and then it will pass that fixture for you. So I'm not the one passing the fixture, PyTest is, and I'm defining it as a parameter. So just to be a little technical there. And I have access to this app here. So what happens with this app is it's going to run everything in here, and then it's going to yield, and then I'll be able to use it for things. So app.testClient is what I want to do, and I'll just return this. So I don't have to yield because I don't need any setup or anything. So I'll just return this test client, and this test client will allow me to simulate requests to the app, which you'll see in a second. So these are the two fixtures I'll need. I'll come back later to update this to have data in the database, but we can get started with our first test here in the test project file. So like I said, with the test project file, it has to start with test underscore, and then all of your tests need to start with test underscore. So I'll be using functions here. You can use tests. You can also use classes, but the classes need to start with test, capital T, and then whatever the name of the test is. But I'll just be using functions here for simplicity purposes. So let's go ahead and write our first test. So I can define a function, and it needs to start with test underscore, and I'll call this test home. So I want to test something on the home page, and I need the client because I'm going to use the client to send simulated requests to my app so I can actually test it. So here what I want to do in my test is the first thing I need to do is I need to have it send a request to my index in the app. So I'll do client.get, And as you can imagine, there's a client.post and a client.put and so on. But here I'm sending a GET request to the index. So just slash, and then I'll get a response back. And what I want to do is I want to check to see if the response has something that I know is going to be there. So the thing that I know is going to be there, so let me go back to the actual page, is here I have home at the top. So this is a title. What I can do is I can check for that. So I can say assert. So all of your tests are going to have assert because that's the whole point. You're checking to see if something is equal. I'm going to check assert. I'm going to assert that the title tag with home in it is inside of response.data. So response.data. And the reason why I have B here is because response.data is a bytes type. I could convert this, I could decode it, but it's easier just to put the B. So I'll just do that. I'll save it. And then once I have my first test, I can just use PyTest on the command line. And we see I have this error saying no module name project. And the reason is because it's looking inside of tests here for that. So what I can do is I can just add a dunder init inside of my test directory. So then it knows that test is a package, and then it can look outside of the package to find things. So now I can run PyTest again. And I get the same error because it added the dunder init inside of the wrong directory. So I just moved it inside of test. Now let's try that one more time. Okay, so now it runs. So we see here it says one pass in 0.05 seconds, and we see the name of the file that I have, tests_project.py, and it passed. So what would this look like if it failed? Let's say instead of home, I put homes, right? So this isn't going to be there. So this assert statement should be false, and the test should fail. So let me go ahead and do this. And now we see all is red, meaning that something went wrong. It shows me kind of some of the data from the response. It can't show everything, but it does show enough. Actually, no, it doesn't. It's kind of cut off. So it doesn't show the title part, but it does give me a hint that something went wrong inside of the response data. Like it couldn't find what it was looking for. So if I just put it back to homes and then do PyTest again, we see everything is passing. So that's the idea with tests. Like basically, you set up something if necessary, and then you do something, right? So you run the app in a particular way, or you run a function in the case of a unit test. You just basically do something, and then as a result of that something, you expect something else to happen. So you expect a response, you expect the database to be updated, you expect something. Like you have to know what that something is ahead of time. And then you just assert on it, right? You assert that the home is in the response data, you assert that the database has particular information in it, and so on, right? So this was a pretty simple one. Let's move on to something that's a little more involved, and let's test the registration system. So before I even write the test, we can think about like what exactly we want to do here. So one thing that we're going to do is we're going to use the client to send a post request to the register route with an email and a password, because that's what it takes. If I show you the routes here, register. Here, I'm passing an email and a password, right? And we expect it to create a new user in the database. And we also expect it to redirect us to the index. So what I can do is I can think in this test, what I want to do is I want to post to the register route, and then I'll check the database to see if the email that I use to create a new user, to register a new user, is in the database. So let's go ahead and write that. So I'll call this test registration. And for this, I'm going to use the client as a fixture. So I'm going to get that passed in. I also want app. So the reason why I want app here is because I need to use with app context when I check the database. So I'll show you that in a moment. But the first thing I can do is I can send a request to the register route. So client post, because I want to send a post request. I could send a GET request and do a test similar to this. And in a real app, you probably would, because you can have tons of tests. But to keep this video short, I'll just do certain types of tests. So here I'm posting to register. And when you want to post, you can pass an argument called data. And then inside of here, you have a dictionary with the data that you want to send. So I need an email. We'll say test@test.com. And then I need a password, right? So this should be a string as well. So password. And then the password I want is test password. right? Doesn't really matter what it is exactly because it's just a test. And then what I want to do is I want to verify that this gets added to my database. So just like here in the configuration, I have to use the app context to check the database. So I'll do with app.app context, right? And I can use this app here because I'm getting it from the parameter list when PyTest passes it to me. And then in here, I want to assert, let's say, a couple of things on the user model. So I need to import the user model first. So up here, I'll do from project import user. This should be project.models, right? So from project.models import user. And then in here, what I want to assert is number one, I only have one user in the database. So user query count, right? So this should be one. And I'm asserting that it is one. And then I can also assert the email. So I can say user query first because there's only one in there. And then I can do .email. And I can check and see if it's equal to test@test.com. Right? So those are the two asserts. And now my second test is done. So I can use PyTest again. And we see it ran two tests now and it passed. Okay, so now let me try breaking it. Let's change this to 2 and do PyTest. And we see assert 1 equals 2 fails because there's only one user in the database. And remember, this database is being destroyed and created for every single test. And one way I can show that to you is I can go to configure tests here and I can just print something here. So let's call this creating database. Let me put caps lock on again. Okay, so creating database. And then I'll run PyTest -s so I can see this. And we see here, I see creating database twice. And the reason why I see it twice is because I have two tests. If I only had one test, let me comment out this one and run this again. I only see it once. So you see it's creating the database for every single test that I have. All right, so if I run it again, I see that. So I'll just remove this print statement because I don't need it. I needed the -s because by default, it doesn't print anything. So I'll just use PyTest from now on. All right, but we see that the asserts are passing because I only have one user in the database, and tests@test.com is the email for the user. Like if I change this to test.com, then we see another assertion error, assert test@test.com does not equal tests@test.com, right? And the one on the left-hand side comes from the database and the right-hand side is the one that I supplied. Okay, so let's do something a little harder now. Let's test posting to the age route. So the age route is the one where I pass a name and then I get an age in response where it's guessing how old I am. So let's test that. Let's call this test age. And I'll pass them the client, right? So I don't need the app in this case because I'm just testing the response data. And what I want to do is I want to do a little bit of setup first. So I could do this generally, like inside of a fixture, or I can do it inside of the tests that are necessary. And what this is registering a user and then logging in with that user. Because my route is protected by login required, I won't be able to send a post request to the age route without logging in first. And I can't log in without a user. So let me first try sending a request to the age route without logging in first. So age and then data. So the data in this case is just a name. So I'll use Anthony again. And I believe it was 57. So I'll assert you are 57 years old and response.data, right? And I'll run this test. And then I see the assertion error, assert you're 57 years old in, and then we see doc type and then 401 unauthorized. So the reason why this happens is because I haven't logged in first. So what I want to do is I want to do a little bit of setup first. So what I can do is I can just copy this up here. Like I said, you can make this more generic so you can have it in multiple tests if you want, but I'll just set it up here. And then after registering, I also want to log in. So I can do clients.post, and I don't need the response here because I won't be using it for anything. So I'll just post then not do anything. And it keeps the same session when I do this. So client.post and then client login. And then the login data will be the same. So I'll just pass in the same data. And now let's see what happens when I run this. Okay, so I was able to run it and it got to the point where it did load the page properly, but it's still failing. So let's see what happens when I go to the page directly. So let me just log in again. Actually, I need to start the Flask app really quick. Just want to verify that's 57. So Anthony at anthony.com, and then I use password 1. I'll go to age, and then I'll put Anthony in here. 56. Okay, so 56. Let's go back, and let's change this to 56. And now let me run the tests. Okay, so it passes. Well, there's a major problem with this. And the problem is I'm actually calling the API in this test. And you may have noticed that the third test was slow. And the reason is because it's calling the API. That's definitely not something that you want to happen in a test. One, your test should be fast. And two, they shouldn't depend on like third-party things. So what I want to do is I kind of want to mock this response. And by mock, I just mean basically create a fake one that I can use to verify that everything is working without having to send an actual request. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it to where the API returns the same thing every time. And this will happen as the result of the request.get being called. So where is it? This will happen as a result of this, but the response in the test won't be the actual response from the API because the API won't get called. It will be some response that I define. So the way to do that is I can use a library called responses. So it kind of goes along with requests. So I'll install it here. So pip install responses. And what I do with responses is first I need to import it. So I can go to the top and just import responses. And then here, the way that responses work is I have to use a decorator. So responses.activate. And then that will allow me to mock some requests in this endpoint. And then here at the top, really anywhere before the actual thing that I'm mocking, I can define like what the response is going to be whenever I call a particular endpoint. So you do this with responses.add, and then inside of here, you set it up. So the first argument is going to be the type of request method. So it's going to be get. So you do responses.get. The second argument is the URL that you want to mock, right? So it's going to match this URL with the request. And if it matches, then it's going to replace the actual API call with the data that I specify as the third argument. So the API is this. So if I go back here, it's just this. I don't need the query string. So anytime it finds a request, sending a request to api.agify.io inside of this test, so nowhere else but only inside this test, it will replace that API call with just a response. So here, the response is going to be JSON, and I can specify everything here. So I'll put my actual age 33, and then the format of the response is something like this: count, and then just some number, and then a name, right? The name that you pass in. So for the test, I want to test my name, Anthony, and this is the format of the response. And then also you can have a status. The status in this case will be 200, but I'm only testing the response. So what it's going to do is anytime it detects that this API is being called, like here, instead of actually calling the API, it's just going to return the JSON that I specify here in the test. So I don't actually call the API, right? So it's able to test everything except the actual API response. I'm substituting my own API response in the test. So now if I do this and hit save, let's try PyTest again. Okay, so we see it's a lot faster and we see it fails. And the reason why it fails is because it's still 56 years old. Here, my age is 33. So I'll update this to 33 and then run this again. And now we see it's all green. Everything has passed. Okay, so we have a third test and that works. And I really intended to do more tests for this video, but I'll just do one more so you can see how it works. And I think in a future video or even the next video, I'll show you another way of testing your app that doesn't depend on this client. Instead, it actually simulates requests in a browser. But for now, let's do one more test. This one won't test an API. What I want to do is I want to test an invalid login, right? So what I can do is I can say test invalid login. And the idea here is I will try to log in first with invalid information, and then I will go to a page that I can't go to and I'll see what the error code is. So that's the test that I'm going to do here. This takes a client, so I won't be checking anything in the database. And then I can start with the login, right? So I'll do this. And notice I don't have the register before this. So without the register, this user won't exist in the database, right? And then I can go to another endpoint. So let's do a GET request to the city endpoint. And then we can assert response.status code, I think it is equal to 401. So let's try this, PyTest, and we see it passes, right? So the reason why I can assert 401 is because that's the error I get if I try to go to this endpoint without logging in first or without successfully logging in first. So this doesn't work. Just as a temporary thing, let me copy this and paste it up here, and we'll see how it no longer works. Right, because it says 200 equals 401. So now it's a 200 status code, which means that everything is okay because I registered the user first, I logged in, and then I went to the endpoint that requires the login, right? So if I change this to 200 and run it again, I get green. If I take away the register, which is the intention for this test, run it again, I get a failing test. And of course, the status code here should be 401. And then it works again. So those are 4 tests I wanted to show you. There are obviously many other tests that you can do. I know I didn't talk about testing in general. Like I just showed you testing in Python, and maybe in a future video, I'll talk about like some of the ideas behind testing and like what you want to test and why you want to test. But in this video, I just kind of assumed that you had an idea of what testing was, and you were just curious on how to do it in Flask. So of course, if you have any questions about testing in Flask or just testing in general, just let me know and I can answer any questions in the comments down below. So that's it for this video. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel already, please subscribe. So thank you for watching, and I will talk to you next time.